fellow crafters. With St. Patrick's Day approaching, it's time to bring some Irish charm into our homes. Today, we're diving into the world of DIY with some fun and easy St. Patrick's Day crafts. From clovers to leprechauns, we've got ideas to make your celebration extra special. Hi, my name is Katie from Lady Red Crafting. Grab your glitter and let's get started. Let's make a wreath rail sign. This one is a fun love sign for St. Patrick's Day, and I'm taking my Waverly antique wax and I'm going to stain this sign completely. And once that has completely dried, I'm going to grab a little dish and I'm pouring some Kelly Green from Apple Barrel in it. And I'm taking a sponge brush here and I'm just lightly painting the 4-leaf clover on this sign. And you can see I'm just kind of going around in a little circle and I'm just spreading that paint really thinly over the top of that 4-leaf clover. Now while that is drying, let's cut some ribbon. And I have these 3 ribbons in my stash. This first one here, I got at Hobby Lobby on clearance last year and I just love it. So I'm going to measure this out to 9 inches and I'm going to cut 10 strips of this ribbon. And this second ribbon I got at Dollar Tree. I believe it was Christmas 1 or 2 years ago and it's been in my stash for some time. And this next ribbon I did get at Walmart and I got it at Christmas time and I really liked this ribbon and it was on clearance, so it worked out great. And this last ribbon I got at Ben Franklin a few years ago and I'm going to cut these into 10-inch strips to start and I'm going to do 10 as well. And now that we have all of our strips cut, I'm going to go ahead and dovetail all of the larger ribbons here. Now this is purely my preference, but you could also diagonal cut them if you'd like, or you could just leave them the way they are. And now that we have all of our ribbon cut, let's go ahead and make some bows. I'm going to start out with a pattern of green, shamrocks, then the tan color, and I'm using the plaid ribbon to actually tie this together. So I'm going to flip that over, and then I'm going to scrunch it a little bit in the center here and tie it just one time just to get everything into place. Make sure it's all fluffed out, and then I will tie a knot after that. That's all there is to it. Let's make 9 more. Now the next part is super easy. We're going to take that plaid ribbon that we tied around the center of the bow and we're going to just kind of bend the bow down a little bit and tie that to the little rail on here. And I'm going to put 5 bows on the top rail and 5 more bows on the bottom rail. And I found that it was easier to do 1 bow on the top, then a second bow on the bottom, and then kept doing that same pattern over and over again until I had all 10 bows tied on. And now that we have all of our bows tied onto our rails, I went back and I just trimmed all of the extra ribbon off of the backside to make it look a little bit nicer. Now let's flip this over and see what this looks like. Wow, this is turning out so amazing, but let's add a little bit more. So I really wanted this wreath rail to pop. So I'm taking this heart-shaped wood piece that I had, and I believe I got this at either Walmart or Dollar Tree. I'm not sure which one. And I'm going to go ahead and just tape this down to a paintable surface. Now let's grab our Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster and paint our heart. And once our heart is completely dried, I'm going to go ahead and grab some of this satin paint from Folk Art, and it's just a forest green color. And we're going to go ahead and just dry brush around the outside perimeter of this heart to give it a nice border. Next, I'm going to go ahead and grab some green satin ribbon here, and this is about 1/4 inch in width. And I'm going to add that to the holes at the top of this heart to make a new hanger. Next, let's go ahead and attach the heart to the wreath rail. First, I'm going to center the wreath rail on top of that heart. And once I found where I want to put everything, I grabbed a pencil and I just made a few little marks so it'll be easier to put this back on there after I've added the glue. And the glue I'm going to be using today is my Tight Bond Quick and Thick glue with a little bit of hot glue. So I'm going to start with the Quick and Thick, and I'm just going to add that to the back side of this wreath rail. And then I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue. And now let's go ahead and just place that wreath rail on top of our heart. And now that everything is secure, our hanger is ready to hang. I just think this turns out so cute. It's such a fun piece for St. Patrick's Day. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you. If you're anything like me, the beginning of a new year is the perfect time to discover new hobbies and learn new skills. And if you're passionate about crafting or just eager to stretch your creative abilities, Skillshare is where you want to be. Skillshare isn't just a platform. It's a vibrant, supportive community where you can explore thousands of expert-led classes. Next level knitting, paper flower crafts, upcycling home decor, or sewing your first quilt. There is something for everyone. I've been diving into the social media content creation in Canva class, and I'm having a blast discovering all the creative ways to use Canva. It's such a fun way to level up your skills, all at your own pace. Skillshare offers so many classes that work with your schedule and creative goals. Whether you're just starting out or you're getting ready to tackle an advanced technique, there's always something to spark your imagination. And here's the best part. The first 500 people who use the link in my description will get a 1-month trial of Skillshare. What are you waiting for? Start today. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Join Skillshare, unleash your creativity, and become part of a community of makers. Let's make 2025 the most creative year yet. Here's a fun DIY you can do at home with a palette from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to put this palette on a paintable surface. And using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Truffle, we're going to give a nice coat of paint to this palette. Now, once your palette is completely dry, we're going to grab some Elmer's school glue. And if you haven't tried this technique before, this is really a cool technique that you can do. And we're just taking this Elmer's school glue, and I'm just going to put a little bit on the palette, and using a paintbrush, we'll go ahead and paint this glue over the top of the palette. Now let's go ahead and grab our Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And I'm taking this chalk paint and we're going to paint over the top of the wet tacky glue on the palette. Let's grab our heat tool or a hair dryer, and we're just going to go ahead and dry the paint on top of the glue. And what's going to happen here is it's going to start crackling all over the palette. It's this really nice technique where it just crackles the whole entire paint, and that's the glue drying underneath the wet paint. Let's set our palette aside. I grab a paintable surface and these adorable shamrocks that I found at the Dollar Tree, and they came in a pack of 8. And for this project, we're going to use 2 of them. I put them on my paintable surface and I just flipped them over. And using my apple barrel paint in the color English Ivy, we're going to just paint a nice coat of paint over the top of these shamrocks. And once our paint has dried, I grabbed my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I'm just going to dry brush around the outer edge of these shamrocks. Now let's go ahead and make a messy bow. And if you haven't made one of these are super simple. All I did was grab some different fabrics that I thought went well with my piece, and I cut them in strips that were 3 to 4 inches in length. I dovetailed all the ribbons ahead of time, and now what you'll see me doing is I'm just going to make an X with my first 2 pieces of ribbon, and I'm just going to continue making an X using a pattern or no pattern at all with the ribbons that I have. There's no rhyme or reason to this. It's just you want to make sure that they all cross over in the same spot. And if you wanted a bigger bow, you could always cut these pieces in longer strips, but since our piece is fairly small, that's why I went with a smaller ribbon length. Now that we have all of our pieces stacked, I'm going to go ahead and kind of cinch them in the center using my hands. And once I've done that, I grabbed a zip tie, and I'm just going to zip tie these together in the center. If you don't have a zip tie, you can tie these together with a piece of twine or another ribbon, whatever works easier for you. Even a pipe cleaner would work. And once your bow is secured, I go ahead and fluff everything out. And if this is the time that if you want to do any trimming, you can trim some of the ribbon if you need to. And if you hadn't dovetailed your ribbons, this would be another good time to do that. Once you are done, you want to cover up that zip tie, and you could use a piece of ribbon, or for this piece, I wanted to use a button. So I'm just going to hot glue a button over the top of the zip tie to finish our bow. Now that we have all of our components made, let's put it all together. Using some hot glue, let's go ahead and attach these shamrocks to our pallet. Next, we'll go ahead and hot glue our bow onto our pallet. And now our Farmhouse shamrock sign is complete. I love how this turns out. That crackling effect gives such great dimension to our piece. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So Dollar Tree's been carrying a lot more wood pieces in their Crafter Square section. And I grabbed this piece that looks like a cutting board out of their section there, and I'm putting it on a paintable surface. And using my antique wax from Waverly, we're going to stain this piece on both sides. And a quick thank you to my current subscribers. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for the support. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing below. And once our piece is completely dry, I go ahead and I flip the piece over and I look to see which side I'd rather use for the front of my decor piece. And once I've decided, I'm going to grab my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and we're going to do a nice dry brush over the front of this piece. I found this adorable sign at the Dollar Tree, and this was in their St. Patrick's Day section, and I'm just going to remove the string at the top there, and we'll save that to use a little bit later. And off camera, I made a cute, just basic farmhouse bow. Now let's put everything together. Using our hot glue, we're going to hot glue the shamrock onto our wood piece. Once we have that secured, I grabbed some brads that I had in my scrapbooking section in my craft room that I haven't used in forever. And I'm just going to use those pieces to cover up the holes that are in the aluminum there. But if you don't have brads, you could also use just some basic little buttons, or you could do some bows, or if you don't mind the holes there, you can just leave them as is. Next, we just hot glue the bow right to the top of our piece, and we get to use that twine from the sign earlier, and we can put that straight through the hole and tie a nice knot, and now we have a cute hanger for our little piece. And this piece turns out fantastic. I love how the farmhouse bow ties everything together. And I think this is a great decor piece with St. Patrick's Day and a fun farmhouse vibe. The Dollar Tree the other day, and I found this gnome in the Valentine's Day section, and I thought, wow, this gnome would be great to make over for St. Patrick's Day. Our first step is removing the pieces from the hat on the gnome. And we're not going to reuse any of that red from the gnome hat, but we are going to keep that little white pom-pom, so please save that. Now it's time to remove the nose from the gnome. Yes, that's kind of a pun there, but we're going to just put that on a paintable surface. I'm using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Mineral to cover this nose, and it took me about 3 coats of paint to get this completely covered. So let's set that nose aside to dry, and while that's drying, let's grab some of our fabric. This fabric I did get at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to unroll it and do a quick iron on it to get any creases out of this fabric. And once I've done that, I'm going to just take the hat and I'm just going to set that on top of the fabric and measure out how much fabric I think I might need. And once I've determined what I think I'm going to need, I'm going to just cut that down one of the straight lines on this pattern. Now let's go ahead and flip over our fabric and flip over our gnome. And place the gnome hat right over the top of the fabric. Next step, we are going to take the fabric and we're going to flip it over the back side of this gnome. And using some of our hot glue and on that thick line on the back of this gnome, we're just going to add the hot glue and flip the fabric and glue it into place. And I trim any of the excess fabric right off here just so that it's not quite as thick on the back side of this gnome. Let's just repeat that same step on the other side. I'm using my hot glue and we're going to flip the fabric over onto the back side and glue everything into place. And since I had a little bit of extra fabric, I found that it was easier to just fold over the fabric to make a nicer edge on the back side of this gnome. And then I'm just going to hot glue that into place. And for the bottom piece of this fabric, I'm going to do the same thing and just tuck that right into the hat and glue it into place. Now let's flip our gnome back over. And before we go any further, I want to make sure I get the handle or the hook all taken care of. So I'm using some just sheer ribbon for this, but you could use jute twine or whatever you'd like. And I'm just making a nice little hanger. And we want to get that in place before we add back our little pom-pom. Now this step is completely optional, but I thought that the hair on the gnome needed to be combed out. So I took a comb and I just kind of combed out the hair and flipped it up just to make it look a little bit fuller. So our next step here is we're going to just flip up the little hat and we're going to reattach our little nose. And I'm just going to hot glue that right into place. So I felt like this hat needed a little bit of a fur brim, and I had this leftover fabric from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to cut a little piece off to make a nice little brim for our hat. And once we got the right size piece measured out, I'm taking my hot glue and we're just going to hot glue that right into place. And now our lucky little gnome is complete and ready to hang for St. Patrick's Day. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this gnome. Thank you for crafting with me today. I hope you enjoyed making these St. Patrick's Day decorations. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, please remember, craft more, stress less.